But yeah, I know a couple parents and a couple people who cannot make it. You know, Michael James Foundation has helped some of y'all get here. Michael James Foundation. She has not met Beth, and then hopefully, you know, I told her once the new year gets by, we'll have a little Zoom call, and she's yeah, they can get together. You know, Beth lost her son. So yeah, I am recording this her story so people can hear it, because they really wanted to be here, but some live across the United States. So take your time. If I do anything, if you need water or anything, let me know. I'll make it happen. It's all yours.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Paige. But,
Hi, Paige.
I'm Tyler's mom. That's who I am. I'm really Tyler's mom. And I brought a picture. This is Tyler, and I want y'all to see him. And so I took some notes because, unfortunately, or fortunately, I did come give this talk last year, and I said, okay, I have my notes. Well, I went to find them today, and I don't know what I did with them. So, about 2 o'clock this afternoon, I'm like, oh wow, I gotta come up with another talk. But I also, you know, thought, well, it's a lot changes in a year. A lot can change in a year. So some things don't change, and some of the things that don't and will never be my love of my son Tyler, and that is gone. That those things have not changed since last year. But I remember looking out at everyone, and I'm a stranger. Y'all are strangers, but you know, you're not really. I see my son in all of you. I know your story is probably very similar to my son's story, so you're not strangers. And that's how I started last year, and I guess that sort of worked, so I'm starting again this year with that, and then I may have to look at my notes. So there are variations from last year, but this is the story of addiction and the struggles of recovery. And my son Tyler, he passed away on New Year's Day. It will be hard to believe, coming up 2 years. So last year when I came, I was 11 months into my journey of grief. And I think part of doing that talk was probably I was still in some form of shock. And this year has brought changes. I am still grieving. I will always grieve. But it has also, maybe some of the shock is gone, and learning how to live beside the fact that my son is gone, and learning how to walk beside that. So I'm probably going to start reading because I want to stay on track. So I really didn't know how I was going to get through the holidays last year, much less come talk about my grief. I didn't know how I was going to do that. I didn't know how I was going to face the first Christmas. I didn't know how I was going to face the trauma of the memories of New Year's. And I certainly didn't know how I was going to get through a talk, but I did. I got through the talk. I got through the holidays. So a little bit of my son's story, and it'll probably go back and forth. The way it started was he went to the University of Alabama and joined a fraternity, and that was in 2000. OxyContin was starting to flood the market. the guys' party and fraternities, and OxyContin was a party drug. And that's how my son's true addiction took off from. At that point in time, I don't think anyone knew what OxyContin was going to lead to. I certainly didn't. So in 2003, he went to his first rehab, and it was here. 7 of his fraternity brothers went also that same summer, and then subsequently he was, failing out of school, so we had to pull him out of school. And I remember being part of the family groups there and listening, and I was just thinking to myself, it's just pills. I mean, it's not so bad, it's just pills. But what all that led to, and there was one father there, and he was talking about heroin, but this was 2003, and I remember thinking, I felt so sorry for him. I was like, I don't know how he's doing it. He was telling these horrible stories of, trying to find his son and walking in horrible places and overdosed dead bodies, and I'm thinking, oh, it's just pills. And as you could guess, the story goes, one day the dealer was out of pills, but he had heroin. And heroin was cheap and the pills were expensive. And then I say we, because I was very much beside my son in this whole journey. And heroin took off, and I thought, heroin, how could he possibly, be doing heroin? How could he be doing needles in heroin? And this is not possible, but it was. And and I'm a nurse, it's irrelevant, I'm really just Tyler's mom, but I have some sense of a medical background. And then over the years, as it would escalate, I was like, okay, well, this is the worst it'll ever be. Heroin is the worst it'll ever be. All of us know that's not true, not today. And he went to a program in Utah just for heroin for 2 years. It was a 2-year program, maybe it was a little over 2 years, and did well and lived out there for a while, and then came back. And I could be here all night if I told you all the different versions of his journey. He had recovery, and then he would cycle back in addiction, and then he would have recovery. And I became desperate. And the higher the stakes, the more desperate I got to save his life. I think there were 8 overdoses until the final one that killed him. But I just kept saying, okay, well, he's hitting rock bottom. When you almost die, don't you say, hey, I'm gonna quit? But that just wasn't the way. Sometimes addiction works, or your brain is wired, and he would seek recovery, and he would be successful for a while. And I felt like I was on a roller coaster ride. And when he was a little boy, we would go to Six Flags, and I was okay with some of those rides. The older he got, and then he would bring friends, and then they would want me to get on something that was terrifying, and I'd stand in line for 45 minutes, and then one day I was like, I'm not riding this ride. So they got in, I got in and walked out on the other side and said, have a nice ride, and that's sometimes how I felt over the years. But I don't want to ride this ride. I hear the clickety click. I see the what's getting ready to happen. I want to get off this ride. And as a mother, it's pretty rough to get off the ride with your child. He was my only child, but I realized over the years that I was enmeshed. I had, you know, I worked, at least I managed that. But my whole life was my son and revolving around the addiction and the chaos and the drama and trying to get him help. And I knew I needed help. I mean, I knew he needed help, but I was, you know, it took me a while to realize I needed help too. And my focus was getting him help, and then I think I was mirroring a lot of the behavior that comes from addiction, the isolation, the depression, the anxiety. You know, I talk to other parents, I don't think that's uncommon. And of course, you know, the enabling and controlling and all the other things that go with it. But I did seek help.
Well, there's a too late. All right, Bruce. Oh, there's food and cookies.
And I did seek help, and I sought help in different ways. I sought it through finding a therapist. I sought it in trying to find a group that, and I know my son felt the same way. Sometimes it's finding your people and your group. And so some was a work conflict schedule, and some was like, I just, you know, I tried Al-Anon, I tried, you know, actually how Chris and I met, though we didn't really know it years ago, was he started a heroin anonymous group for, you know, loved ones.
My best, Kyle Nelson, some of y'all know, he was my best friend who I found dead, and his girlfriend at the time started an H-Anon meeting, which was at Summit Wellness in Alpharetta, and I actually went to the first meeting, which I think you were at the first one. I didn't know her then,
Right.
but that's just kind of, and then obviously we meet people at the church, but yeah, it's kind of crazy how everyone interacts.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
mean, it's sometimes it's a small world,
It
it's
is.
addicted world. And I met a couple there, and they told me about a parent group, and it was just for parents of adult children that were struggling with addiction. And that group in many ways saved my life. I was a wreck when I went in there, a wreck. All I could talk about was the latest drama, and it was just, you know, still being so consumed with my son, and they listened patiently. But at some point in time I realized that no, you're talking about his story, what's my story? And my story is, I'm kind of sick right now. And slowly, I went to that group for quite some time. I will say it also was a godsend, because when I did lose my son, they were the people that were there. Two of them drove, because my son was in Augusta at the time, drove to the ICU, and one of them actually performed my son's service. And so I say, find your group. We don't heal in isolation. Not me, and not you. And I can say that. I haven't personally had an addiction, but I've lived next beside it. And I was very close to my son, and we had many talks over the years, and none of us heal in isolation. So to kind of fast forward to some degree, my son came home for Christmas, and trust me, we had a lot of non-Hallmark Christmases. You know, they were just really, you know, not real good. You probably can relate. And I thought he was doing well. He had not done well the year before. And I remember sitting on the end of his bed, and he had gone back-to-back detoxes, and, he looks so broken and so frail. And, whether knowingly or unknowingly, but, I know fentanyl had to be in the pills, whatever, because, he wasn't testing positive, but he, at that point in time, they needed to catch up with the testing. And, he was sitting on his bed, and, he says, "Mom," and this was about 15 months before he would pass away. He said, "They said if I don't quit, I'm going to die." And, I remember he cried and I cried, and I held his hand and I said, "I don't want you to die." And he got help after that, and he went into sober living, and I thought he was doing well, and he did one more geographical move. We had several: Utah, Tennessee, Florida.
Florida.
And, they never worked. They never worked for long, because it's still you, whether you're in Tennessee or you're in Utah or Florida, it's still you. And recovery isn't a place, can be a launching pad, but recovery is in you, just like recovering from my son's death is in me. People can support you, they can guide you, but ultimately it's in you. If love and support could save my son, he would still be alive. And it's just, unfortunately, that's not the way that it works. So he moved to Augusta, and because he had some friends that were in recovery and doing well, I thought it was a good move. I mean, even though, hey, Utah, Florida, Tennessee. But he came home I went over there for Thanksgiving. He came home for Christmas. I always had this intuition, though, like this thing, and it did prevent some things in retrospect, that something was wrong. Like one time, years ago, he says, "I don't feel good." He'd just gotten off the streets and going into sober living, and I had the flu. The flu was going around, like, yeah, the flu. I didn't worry about it. I just said, "Hey, bring me some soup and Gatorade." But something just said, and I'm not an alarmist, trust me, I'm a nurse, I don't alarm. So, but something said, and I drove him to the ER, and he was septic. He spent 5 weeks at Moorside. And there were multiple times that I would just go, And I did ask him, I said, "Are you going to be okay? Are you going to be okay if you come home for Christmas? Is it going to trigger anything? Or are you going to be," "No, Mom, I'm okay." And I even went so far as to say, "Hey, I could get an Airbnb. I've got a big dog, so, gotta work that out." But, and then I incidentally tripped at work and fell and broke my hand. And he's like, "No, I'm just coming home." And he came home, and there weren't any alarms. We had a great 3 days. And that picture that you have, that was 3 days before. He's smiling, he looks great. And I got a phone call. Well, to back it up, I couldn't get him. I had a doctor's appointment, and I couldn't get, he left on Monday after Christmas. On Tuesday, we didn't talk, no big deal. The last words we have, "I love you." He sent a text, "Had a great Christmas." And then I couldn't get him on Tuesday, and I'm like, my bells are going off because it's going to the voicemail. I don't like this. Maybe that was Wednesday. I called his friend over there that's supposed to be, a reliable friend that I can call. And I said, "Dan," I said, you know, I can't get Tyler, it just keeps going in the voicemail. I said, can we go check on him? He's like, yeah, sure. And so he does, I guess, and calls me back, and he's like, well, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I think he's been drinking. So I'm like, okay. And subsequently in the story that I will tell, there was a lot more to that. And I went to bed, and I was woken up by Dan the next morning saying, the paramedics are working on Tyler. He's being transported to the hospital, and you need to come. And, you know, I was driving over there, and I went through 8 overdoses. You know, I went through all these things. I was like, he's gonna be okay, he's gonna be okay. And yeah, I know he's on a ventilator. He's been on a ventilator before. He's gonna be okay. And I called one of my friends in my support group, and I said, well, do you think that, I can't decide, should I call his dad, because the history with his dad is they were estranged for many, many years. And once the addiction got bad, his dad was, see ya. And I said, I think I'll just wait and see when I get there. I'll just wait and see. And I entered the ICU, and I tell you these details because it's part of the story. And I walked in, and I call him, y'all may not know because you're younger, but I called him Doogie Howser. He looked like he was about 19 or 17, and he was the doctor. And he says, so, do you want to continue life support? And I'm just like, what are you talking about? I mean, yes, I want to continue life support. And he says, well, does he have a father? I said, yeah. He said, you need to call him. And, but I don't know, he looked like my son Tyler. He looked peaceful on a ventilator. And I still, like, I couldn't, so I called his dad, miraculously his dad answered, and I called his best friend, and, you know, took a while, about 6 hours for them to get there because of traffic and stuff, but in the meantime, Doogie's just back in my face, and he's like, well, so what do you think they're gonna want when he gets here? When they get here, I'm like, that's the only time I really kind of lost it. I said, I don't know what they want, I know what I want. I said, my son was born in this hospital, and I don't want him dying here. And so for 4 days, from the beginning, they said he's likely brain dead. And as the days went, his organs, you know, his liver, kidneys, everything was shutting down. And had an MRI on New Year's Eve, and not that I really even realized it was New Year's Eve. And the neurologist came in New Year's Day and said, there's essentially no hope. If he were 97%, he's not surviving. At 3%, he would be in vegetative state the rest of his life. And I had to make the decision to take him off life support. And as traumatizing and horrific as that was, I will say that being able to be there and hold his hand and be by his side when he left this earth, in my opinion, was far better than how it would have played out so many times, a phone call, and that was it. And it was very close to being that. And so I came back, and from that picture that you see, I'm planning his funeral. And it's hard to reconcile, you know. It's hard to reconcile. How in a week did we get, I mean, all these dark days of unknown, you're struggling, you're in horrible shape, and how how do I reconcile this? And I didn't really talk last year about my emotions. No, really. I remember going through the planning of the funeral. The only thing, his dad contributed some money, but as far as planning or anything like that, no, it was all, I did all of it. And I remember just, I was numb and not feeling, or it's just overwhelming. And I say that because I think a lot of these feelings that I talk about are feelings that you may have had during your own addiction. I know the feelings that my son had. And of being numb and not feeling. And then the funeral came and passed, and I took 3 months off work, and everybody considers me a pretty positive, strong person, but I hide it well. Y'all probably can relate to that. You look better than you are. And every time, morning I open my eyes, I just want to close them. It's like I just live for just, please let me go to bed and go to sleep. And every morning it was just the same thing. And I did have the support of my friends. I will say they call me, they sort of drag me out occasionally for coffee or lunch, but I was not actively trying to end my life, but I did not know how to live without my son at that point in time. I just didn't know, how do I go forward? And I have, and you will too. You will go forward. And a year from now, I don't know if you just walked in these doors, or you've been here a year, or this is your 3rd time, 10th time. It doesn't matter. Just, you will keep going. You will. You will, and you can. And you know, I thought trying to find answers in the beginning, when I was in this 3-month self-imposed lockdown, my energy, besides wanting to go to sleep, was I want answers. I want to know who sold it to him. I'm going through his phones. The current phone he had dropped in the toilet or whatever. I even sent that to Texas. I was on a mission. We're going to resurrect the phone. I had some old phones. I wanted answers. I got them, a lot of them. I know that he left my house the day after Christmas. He drove to Clayton County to his old dealer, and he bought what I assume, I know fentanyl killed him. I assume pills with fentanyl. And he went back to Augusta. He was okay that night. He was okay on Tuesday. And then whatever pill that he took on Wednesday, you know, the fentanyl was probably deadly. And I went to the police. I started with Johns Creek because that's where I live. And then they took it to Clayton County because that's where the dealer is. And then I even reached out to the DA. And I say this because I thought if I could bring this guy to justice, somehow right the wrong, somehow it would help me. So I did all that, and I'm not saying it didn't help me, I'm not sure. But once I kind of hit a wall, like, okay, Johns Creek has passed it off, and that detective's not even doing narcotics anymore. It's passed off to Clayton County because that's where the dealer is, and the DA. I was not going to drive down to Clayton County. A little white lady driving down to Clayton County was not going to happen. So, I stopped short of that, but then I finally, and then I went through text messages, and I know the same dealer not only killed my son, but he killed a friend of his 3 years prior. And I mean, the guy should be off the streets, but I realized, you know, it's part of the serenity prayer. I did everything I could. I was not going to try to go through some court resurrecting all this trauma, and it wouldn't bring my son back. And I think sometimes you have to say, hey, what is going to bring me peace? And a lot of times, I'm sure there are things in your life you want to right the wrongs that have been done to you, and somehow that's going to make things better. But I'm not sure that's the way it works. And I also had to find forgiveness. Not for the dealer. There's no forgiveness for him. I just had to accept that he may never go away. He may not. And I learned to live with that. I also found out that his friend called me because I wanted the hospital records. Because it was just happening so fast. I wasn't looking, nobody did anything wrong. That's not what I was looking for. I just needed the story to somehow make sense. And I ended up finding the ER report. I know that he was in very bad shape when he arrived at the ER. He arrested 2 more times in the ER. So he was barely really alive at that point in time. I found out though the names of the ER doctors, and eventually I wrote them a thank you note and thanked them for trying to save my life, my son's life, and my life in some ways, and that they gave me the opportunity to be by my son's side, and that he, as my son was one of the year that he passed away, I think there was 116,000 overdoses, deadly overdoses, and so and I found out that, you know, his friend didn't really tell me the whole story. His friend knew he was in bad shape that night, bad shape, and to the point that he said you should go to the hospital, but then he turned around and left him. And that has taken, I've never said anything to him. I only know this from getting the reports and the paramedics reports, and the paramedics are of course asking, you know, do you know what he took? So I say that because it was real tempting to say something. I'm gonna be honest, it was, but I knew I couldn't. I really couldn't. I mean, his friend has had struggles in the past, so I don't know what shape he was in. I thought he was good and sober, but I don't know that, and I couldn't have it on me to confront someone and, you know, potentially endanger their sobriety if he was sober, and and I don't know. I know if I was told the truth that I would have called 911. I would have driven to Augusta, but I also know I've had to play it out in my mind. But this is your version page where you're changing the end because you want the end to change. In your version, Dan tells you the truth. You fly in your car to Augusta. You save your son once again, and the story has a happy ending. And maybe that would have happened, but the course of addiction is maybe this year it wouldn't be in Augusta. Maybe it would be in Atlanta. I mean, I've had to find acceptance. I've had to find forgiveness, and I think all of these things relate to struggles with addiction. And I've had to get out of my head at times I mean, everyone says how much Tyler loved me, and I know how much I loved him, and everyone, I mean, all these places, Utah, Florida, Tennessee, I would end up knowing people, and everyone said, you know, and I have cards, you were a great mom. Well, there are times that, I mean, I'm in my head, I'm going, was I? You know, what about that time? You know, maybe I failed then, and maybe, you know, his dad and I shouldn't have gotten divorced when he was little, and you get in your head, and that's been a struggle. And I'm sure all of you get in your head, and you think about, you know, the things you regret, things you feel guilty about, the things that, you know, you wish could change. But when we get in our head, we're also getting into isolation. So whatever it takes, get it out. Whether it's to a sponsor, to a group, to a therapist. And I mean, I can say this for myself. You know, isolation kills. We don't heal in isolation. Sometimes it's good for self-reflection to have a quiet moment to yourself. But if your head is spinning and you're thinking about all the worst things you've ever done, and you can't think of the good things that you have done, then that's not helpful. And some of the things with my son, I don't know if it would have been differently, but I do know when you're in a group, my son would do good in sober living. Well, toward the end, I'm not so sure that's an accurate statement, but mostly he did. And then he would go to meetings, but it was when he got out of settings like this, when life really was gonna come at you. And he quit going to meetings, he quit having a sponsor, and he tried to manage life on his own. And I also know, unfortunately, you know, I have friends that lost children and they were going to meetings, they had a sponsor. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that that's the magic card, but what I do think it means is it gets you out of isolation and it gets you in connection. And you have to throw everything you have at it. Every single thing, because there is hope. There's hope for everyone in this room. Absolutely. My son's ended in a way that I never wished for. My son did not think he was going to die that week. I knew he had a watch. They gave him the watch in a bag in the ICU, and I had it in a safe, and I got it out, and I realized it was a smart watch, and then I ordered a battery for it, and then I resurrected it, and you know, there's messages there. The last message was really on his life, and it was, you know, to his aunt. Surprisingly, there was a message between his dad and you know, and it was, you know, see you next year and Merry Christmas. And my son had no intention of dying that week, and he has had friends that did, but he has friends that are in strong recovery and have been, and they're leading, you know, joyful, happy, healthy, sober lives. And just because there's this side of the story doesn't mean there's not the other side of the story. And I think that's really the message that I want to give, because I want to come in here and, you know, tell you all the horrible things, and you just go, have a nice day. It's been a long road for me, and last year I just got through the holidays, and the holidays are triggers, and there's no doubt they triggered my son. And so safeguard yourself. Have a plan. You know, reach out. Certainly it can happen outside of the holidays, but the holidays can be rough. They stir up emotions, families, all sorts of things. And I know, reflecting back from getting the talk last year and getting the talk this year, I certainly wasn't talking about any kind of hope for myself. And I can say, I mean, last year I participated in Christmas. At least I sat at the table at my sister's, and then I was with his best friend on New Year's Day. My son's buried in Birmingham, and that's where I grew up. But this year, I'm actually cooking and I'm participating, and it's how do you have opposing emotions? How do you hold hope and grief in both hands? And how do you, for y'all, I mean, how do you hold recovery and hope, probably fear, the emotions that come with addiction and recovery, and a lot of times they come out strongly in recovery because you're not using and you're not, suppressing those emotions. And so I came last year really as a way to honor my son, and then I realized I didn't really think I had a whole lot to give, but I guess I did. And I got back from this group so much, and I think the message is, in giving, you do get back. Obviously, you have to be in a place that you can do that, but just I hope you find some joy in this season, and I certainly pray for all of you. And I know recovery is possible. I do. I saw a little, I never know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, a little meme one time, and I was famous for sending those to my son, words of encouragement. And there was one that said something along the lines of, pray for the one that's taking their first drug and has no idea. Pray for the ones that are still actively using, and pray for the one that's taking their last drug and doesn't know it. And I hope that in telling my son's story, subsequently my story, that I know I can't save anyone in this room, but I hope I can impact you and encourage you. And so I'll end it at that, and if we could just maybe have a moment of silent prayer for those that are struggling still, for those that we have lost, and for those of you that are in recovery.
With that being said, when Paige told her story last year, throughout the whole year, I would check in with her, and so many guys, one, Solomon knows and works with now. I mean, Robert, he when a few other guys, checked up on Paige, and she played a huge impact, and it was her first time sharing it, and sharing the story. Just again, I talked to a lot of y'all's family members, whether it's your sisters, wives, moms, and I see all of them in Paige. And then for those, Paige doesn't even know this, but literally what she said, and it's kind of crazy. We had two clients who got kicked out about 3 months ago, and it was on Thursday night they got kicked out. On Friday night they used, Saturday morning one went to rehab, on Saturday night the other one died. And they lived in, when you said Augusta to Atlanta, they're from, switched, but they're on, his mom did the same thing with the police and described it to the T. and it just like goes to show you like y'all's choices impact so many people. It's not. I mean, yes, you have your immediate family, but like I mean, has impacts a ripple effect. And hopefully you guys can learn from this. And holidays are rough. Yes, it's not just the holidays, but for every process group for the past few months, what I always say: get a good group of friends who you can be transparent, be honest with, and have that good. Share how you're feeling. Because like I said when we first walked in, there'll probably be someone, unfortunately, that will pass away. And that we know in the next couple weeks. I mean, in the month of, I think it was the month of March. I forget what year it was. I literally lost a friend every single day of that month. This is probably 2016. So there's so many people out there who have very similar stories to Paige, and we're lucky Paige can share and be open with it. And hopefully you guys remember this before you decide to make a bad decision. And for Christmas, I'm always home. Every holiday, I stay around Stepping Stones for you guys. So please, reach out to me. It is life or death, and a lot of you got through here through the scholarships, and take advantage of that because a lot of people don't have that opportunity. I know Paige and I talked about, some sober livings are just, crap and don't drug test and just don't really care. But here I know you guys are drug tested, and I know you guys care about each other. And it's, Paige this past year has, we text here and there, and I've seen her grown, and it's, again, she's like, she's just going to write it out. So don't write it out. She comes straight from the heart, and that makes it authentic. Which you told it last year. A lot of the guys were like, after they know the whole details, and they're like, does she speak around for a living? Because it was authentic. And hopefully you guys felt that, and hopefully you guys can, everything she described. I know some of y'all's story, and I can point out at least one part of her story that relates to y'all's story. Say your prayers for Paige, during these holidays. We will do it for everyone. We're a team. And this picture of her son too. I mean, this is what always gets me. This is a week from this to burying someone, and it just with told the guys that I spoke at Justin's. He's up Rivers of Hope, and his aunt bought him an Amazon jacket, and at the time he got 2 pounds of stepping stones till he died. The Amazon package came after he passed away. That's just how fast this shit can go. Keep doing. You guys are doing well. Keep meeting with your sponsors. Keep going to meetings, and I'm a silver lining kind of guy. And this tragedy, will impact y'all, and hopefully you guys remember this, because next time you talk to a loved one, picture Paige. I know I see my mom, and my mom went to Al-Anon and all of that, and it's today's day and age. Mike Barnes, some of y'all, Blake may have been here for Mike Barnes, maybe. His mom, I talked to here and there, but he thought he was doing cocaine, was cut with fentanyl, and some of y'all know, Dustin, I know you do, but his 16-year-old daughter, his best friend, died from eating a weed edible that was laced with fentanyl. It's just, you're playing with your life. So, Paige, I appreciate you coming out here as always, and whatever we do to help you anytime, we will. And that, just so you guys know, Sugar Shane's did provide the cookies, and Teresa Johnstone, the great therapist. I know some of y'all know her. And Bo Gann. Some of y'all know Bo. Bo was a client here, and he overdosed and survived, but he used to be worked out and be huge in the recovery community. He can't even walk, talk, and he is a caretaker, and he can't live his life. It's a very sad story. I mean, it's almost a paraplegic kind of situation. And his dad also contributed to this to show support of Paige and what she's doing. So thank you. Anyone have any words, questions for Paige or anything, or talk privately after? There's pizza, cookies, all that stuff.
Thank you, Paige.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I brought y'all a little tree right here on the table. A little side note, that tree that you see Tyler standing beside, I didn't take it down. I didn't take it down for a year and a half. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And, you know, finally, it's like, I need to. People say, hey, I'm gonna come and help you take it down. And it was like, it was my, I don't know, it was a form of healing and grief and anyway, I finally took it down. Most of the lights weren't working anymore because I was up for so long, but I bought another tree, and so this tree is sort of in remembrance of Tyler.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that, you know, small stuff like that too, or you just walk by, you know, subconsciously, you know, it triggers that. I mean, statistically proven by, you know, people, small things like that do bring back, obviously it carries on Tyler's name, but it makes you think of Paige's story, and Tyler's story, you know. But yeah, holidays are rough, guys. And this is, you know, I told you guys last process, obviously this, and then we had a client who went home on pass, and he said goodnight to his mom on Christmas Eve, and his mom found him dead in his bed Christmas morning with a needle in his arm. This was in Indiana. That happened. I don't know if a few of y'all know who that was. But it is life or death, guys, you know, so take it serious, but, you know, we're all here for each other. Yeah, guys, a lot of you guys get to see the other side, because a lot of times we just get to hear our bullshit stories and, you know, our you know, stuff, and you don't get to see the reality of it. And this is, you know, this is one person of a family. You know, there's aunts, uncles, dads, sisters, kids. You know, it spreads a ripple effect, man. So thank you guys for being here, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right. There's tons of food. Please eat. Mingle and.
My God.
Yeah.